Hey guys, tonight we slip through misty fjords where sleek Viking longships slice the water like knives through butter. You're crouched low, gripping an oar, salt spray stinging your face as the horizon promises chaos. These raids aren't just pirate joyrides, they're calculated, deadly, and frankly, you probably won't survive this. But let's find out why the Vikings crushed it so hard. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're gliding on a longship, a marvel of 8th century engineering. These aren't clunky tubs, they're lean, mean raiding machines. Built from oak, their shallow drafts let you skim rivers where heavier ships would belly flop. You're hauling 60 men, maybe 80, all rowing in sync. The square sail catches wind, pushing you at 15 knots. Insane for the time. Mainstream history credits these ships for the Vikings' reach from Lindisfarne to Constantinople. You're not just sailing, you're teleporting across medieval Europe. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some longships had carved dragon heads on their prows, supposedly to scare off sea monsters. Did they believe it? Maybe. It's like slapping a beware of dog sign on your fence, even if you own a chihuahua. Historians still argue whether these carvings were for intimidation or just flexing craftsmanship. Either way, you're staring at one now, its snarling teeth glinting in the dawn. You're rowing hard, muscles burning, but the ship's design makes it feel effortless. The keel flexes with the waves, not against them. You're not fighting the sea, you're dancing with it. And that's the first secret: mobility. Vikings hit fast because their ships were built for speed and stealth. You're not lumbering in like some royal navy. You're a shadow slipping past defenses. Imagine trying to guard a coastline against ghosts. That's what monasteries faced in 793 AD when you and your crew hit Lindisfarne. Monks didn't stand a chance. Now, you're not just a rower, you're a planner. These ships let you strike deep inland. You're not stuck hugging coasts. You're snaking up the Seine, raiding Paris by 8:45. The ship's light enough to portage too. You and the boys drag it overland when rivers get dicey. Try that with a Frankish barge. Good luck. This mobility let Vikings hit targets others couldn't dream of. You're not just raiding, you're rewriting the map. But it's not all smooth sailing. You're dodging storms, jagged rocks, and the occasional pissed-off local with a bow. The ship's clinker-built planks overlap like fish scales, making it tough but flexible. One guy's bailing water with a bucket. Hope he's not the seasick type. Oh, And speaking of buckets, here's a joke. Why'd the Viking bring a bucket on raids? Easier to carry loot than his ego. You chuckle, but you're focused. The ship's your lifeline, your ticket to riches or a watery grave. You're nearing the target now. Some sleepy village. The Longship's low profile keeps you hidden. You're not announcing your arrival with trumpets. You're a whisper in the fog. This is why raids worked. You're already looting before anyone screams, Vikings! The ship's not just transport, it's a weapon. You're starting to get why these guys were unstoppable. But don't get cocky. There's more to this than fast boats. You're crouched in the Longship's belly, heart pounding as the shore looms. The village sleeps, unaware of the storm you're about to unleash. This isn't a random hit. It's a masterclass in surprise. Vikings didn't just show up. They struck like lightning, gone before anyone could blink. You're part of that now, gliding through dawn's mist, oars silent. The key to their raids: nobody saw you coming. Mainstream history points to 793 AD, when Vikings sacked Lindisfarne's monastery. It wasn't luck, it was strategy. You're not charging in blind. Scouts scoped this place weeks ago, noting guards, tides, even the monk's prayer schedule. You know they're defenseless, clutching crosses, not swords. Your crews timed it perfectly. Low tide, no moon. You're not fighting a battle. You're stealing a victory. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings smeared soot on their faces, blending into the night like medieval ninjas. Was it practical or just to look badass? Probably both. Imagine stumbling out of bed to see soot-streaked berserkers in your yard. Good luck sleeping after that. Historians still argue whether these theatrics were planned or just warriors hyping themselves up. Either way, you're feeling the rush, your own face smudged, axe heavy in hand. You leap ashore, boots squelching in mud. No war cries yet. Silence is your weapon. The village is a maze of thatch and timber, but you've memorized the layout. You're not wandering, you're surgical. Vikings hit soft targets, monasteries, markets, places fat with loot and light on spears. You're targeting the church, its silver chalices, practically begging to be snatched. By the time anyone screams, you're halfway done. This speed comes from planning. You're not just a raider, you're a logistics nerd. Your crews split into teams. One group grabs loot, another watches the path, a third preps the ship. It's like a heist movie, but with worse hygiene. Joke break. Why'd the Viking raid at dawn? Because sleepy villagers isn't just a vibe. It's a strategy. You smirk, but you're focused, slipping through shadows. The real genius. Timing. Vikings knew winter froze rivers, trapping defenders, so you're hitting in spring, when paths are muddy and militias are scattered. You're exploiting chaos, flooded fords, feuding lords. Nobody's ready. You're not fighting armies, you're dodging them. This is why raids worked. You're gone before the king even hears about it. That Lindisfarne raid, it shocked Europe because nobody expected it. You're rewriting what invasion means, but it's not all smooth. A dog barks and you freeze. Someone stirring, a farmer with a pitchfork. You signal your crew and they melt into the dark. This is the other half of surprise. Discipline. You're not a mob, you're a scalpel. Vikings trained for this, drilling silent approaches, knowing when to bolt. You're not here to conquer, just to profit. The ship's already turned, ready for escape. You grab a sack of loot, candlesticks, coins, a fancy book nobody here can read. The village wakes, but you're sprinting back, laughing under your breath. Another joke. Why don't Vikings knock? Because doors are just suggestions. You're on the ship now, rowing hard, the shore fading. They'll curse your name, but you're untouchable. Surprise made this possible, and you're already planning the next hit. You're not on the ship anymore. You're in a Viking village, sweat dripping as you swing an axe at a wooden dummy. This isn't playtime. It's training, and it's brutal. Viking raids didn't just happen because of fast ships or sneaky plans. You're learning the hard way. Their warriors were forged like steel, raised to fight from the cradle. You're aching, but you're starting to see why these guys were so deadly. Mainstream history notes Vikings were skilled fighters, often clashing with poorly trained levies. You're not facing farmers with pitchforks here, though. You're sparring with men who've wrestled bears for fun. Training starts young. Boys learn spears before they learn letters. You're dodging thrusts, your shield splintering. These guys don't just fight, they live for it. By 800 AD, Viking warbands were shredding Saxon shield walls, thanks to drills like these. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings believed getting hit in training built courage, so they'd let kids whack them with sticks. Sounds like a parenting fail, but it made fearless warriors. Imagine your dad saying, "Go on, smack me, harder." Historians still argue whether this was cultural or just masochism. Either way, you're not volunteering to test it. You're learning fast, though. It's not just strength. Vikings train for chaos. You're wrestling 1 minute, throwing javelins the next, then running laps in full gear. Your lungs burn, but this is the point. Endurance. Raids mean long rows, quick fights, and faster getaways. You're not a knight in shining armor. You're a lean, mean looting machine. Joke break. Why'd the Vikings skip leg day? Because the ship's oars don't care about your quads. You laugh, but your calves are screaming. The real edge is teamwork. You're in a shield wall now, shoulder to shoulder, moving as one. Vikings didn't just brawl, they coordinated. You lock shields, brace for impact, and shove forward. This isn't Hollywood's lone wolf nonsense. Raids needed tight crews. You're drilling signals, learning to read your leader's grunts. When you hit that village, you'll move like a wolf pack, not a mob. Weapons are your lifeblood. You're sharpening a sword, its iron singing under the whetstone. Vikings didn't have standardized gear, but they obsessed over quality. Your blade's a status symbol, maybe traded from Frankish smiths. You're also slinging a bow, a spear, and a sea axe, a nasty dagger for close work. Training means mastering all of them. You're not a specialist, you're a Swiss Army knife. But it's not all physical. You're learning to think like a raider. Your trainer's barking about weak points. Go for the knees, not the chest. You're studying how to read terrain, spot ambushes, even fake a retreat to lure enemies. This is why Vikings won against bigger forces, brains over brawn. You're not just fighting, you're outsmarting. There's a mental side too. You're chanting war songs, hyping yourself up. Vikings used rituals to banish fear. Some even chewed herbs to get a buzz before battle. You're not sure if it's placebo or magic, but you feel invincible. Another joke. Why'd the Vikings sing before a raid? Because row, row, row your boat hits different with axes. You grin, but you're focused. You're exhausted, collapsing by the fire. These warriors weren't born. They were built. Every bruise you've got proves it. Raids worked because you and your crew are machines. Tough, smart, and ready for anything. But don't get comfy. Tomorrow's another day of pain, and the next raid's coming fast. You're adrift on a restless sea, the longship creaking under your feet as stars prick the sky. No GPS, no compass, just you, the waves, and a gut feeling about where land lies. Viking raids didn't just rely on muscle or surprise. They leaned hard on navigation skills that seem like wizardry. You're learning to read the world's pulse, and it's why these raiders hit targets others couldn't even dream of finding. Mainstream history credits Vikings with mastering open sea travel by the 8th century. You're not hugging coasts like timid merchants. You're crossing the North Sea, aiming for England or Ireland. Your tools? A sunstone, maybe. A crystal that catches polarized light to find the sun on cloudy days. You're holding one now, squinting through its milky glow. It's not magic, but it feels like it. With this and a sundial stick, you're plotting courses while Franks are still praying for fair winds. Here's a quirky tidbit. Vikings sometimes released ravens mid-voyage. If the bird flew back, you were nowhere near land. If it soared forward, you followed. It's like texting "you home" to the coastline. Historians still argue whether this was genius or just bird-based gambling. Either way, you're watching a raven now, hoping it doesn't loop back and mock your seamanship. You're not just stargazing for fun. The pole star's your anchor, low on the horizon but steady. You're memorizing constellations, not for poetry, but for survival. By day, you're reading wave patterns. Swells from distant storms clue you in on your position. Even whales breaching nearby mean shallow waters. You're not sailing blind, you're decoding the ocean's secrets. Joke break. Why'd the Viking trust the sea? Because it's the only thing deeper than his ego. You chuckle, but you're focused, scanning the horizon. This isn't solo work. You're with a navigator, a grizzled guy who smells like fish and knows every current from here to Greenland. He's teaching you to feel the winds shift, to taste salt in the air for land's nearness. Vikings didn't have maps, but they had memory. You're learning oral charts, sagas of rocks, tides, and safe harbors. One wrong turn, and your fish food. You're also dodging dangers. Reefs lurk like assassins, and fog can swallow you whole. Last week, a storm nearly flipped the ship. You're still shaking, but that's the Viking edge. They sailed through hell. By 860 AD, they're hitting Iceland, then Greenland, maybe even North America. You're not just a raider, you're an explorer, rewriting what's possible. The ship's your compass, too. Its keel aligns with the wind, helping you gauge direction. You're trimming the sail, feeling the boat respond. This isn't just transport, it's a partner. You're starting to get why raids worked. Vikings could strike anywhere, anytime, because they own the sea. Another joke. Why'd the Viking love his ship? Because it's the only one who doesn't talk back. You grin, but your hands are raw from the ropes. You're nearing land now, a faint smudge on the horizon. The navigator nods. You're on course. This is it. The payoff. That village doesn't know it yet, but you're coming. Navigation got you here, and it'll get you out with loot in hand. You're not lost at sea. You're exactly where you need to be. And that's why the Vikings were unstoppable. You're crouched behind a dune, watching a village stir in the pre-dawn chill. Your breath catches as a child's laugh carries on the wind. But you're not here for peace. You're a Viking, and your crew's about to unleash terror, not just with axes, but with dread itself. The raids worked because Vikings didn't just steal. They weaponized fear, leaving survivors too shaken to fight back. You're feeling that power now, and it's chilling. Mainstream history records the psychological impact of Viking raids, like the 793 AD Lindisfarne attack that left monks trembling for decades. You're not just hitting a target, you're branding it. Your crew's howling war cries echo like wolves, designed to paralyze. You're not charging yet. You're letting the noise sink in. Villagers freeze, clutching their kids, already half defeated. This is deliberate. Fear softens them up before your boots even hit the shore. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings dangled bones or skulls from their belts, clattering as they moved. Was it to spook enemies or just flex their grim style. Either way, imagine that rattling in the fog. Historians still argue whether these were ritual trophies or psychological props. You're wearing a few now, and they're heavier than you expected, clinking with every step. You're moving now, slow and deliberate. Your shield's painted with a snarling beast, another mind game. Vikings didn't just fight, they performed. You're not a man. You're a nightmare in leather and iron. The village's lone guard drops his spear, eyes wide. You don't blame him. Your crew's berserkers are frothing, half naked, chewing on their shields. Are they high on mushrooms or just method actors? Doesn't matter. The effect's the same. This fear isn't random. You're targeting symbols, torching the church steeple, smashing altars. It's not just loot, it's message sending. By 840 AD, Frankish chronicles describe whole towns fleeing at rumors of Viking sails. You're not fighting armies, you're breaking spirits. Joke, break. Why'd the Vikings scare the monk? Because Boo hits harder with a battle axe. You smirk, but you're focused, watching a woman drag her kids into the woods. The real trick is unpredictability. You're not hitting every village, just enough to keep everyone guessing. You might raid, or you might sail past. That uncertainty keeps coasts on edge. You're not just a raider, you're a ghost story. And when you do strike, you're merciless, but selective. Kill enough to terrify, spare enough to spread the tale. You're not here to wipe them out. You're here to haunt them. But it's not all theatrics. You're calculating. Your leader's signaling to spare the granary. Burning it starves future loot. This is terror with a purpose. Control. You're not a barbarian. You're a strategist. Another joke. Why'd the Viking whisper in battle? Because silence is scarier than screams. You nod, slipping through the chaos, axe ready. You're back on the ship now, loot stacked, the village's flames licking the sky. Survivors will talk, and that's the point. They'll spread your legend, making the next raid easier. Fear's your shadow, following you across the sea. You're starting to see why Vikings didn't need big armies, just the right kind of dread. You're back on the Longship, sacks of silver and furs piled at your feet. The sea stretching endless before you. The raid's done, but the real work's just starting. Viking raids weren't just about grabbing loot. They were about turning chaos into wealth. You're not a pirate hoarding gold in a cave. You're a businessman, and the Vikings' knack for loot and trade made their raids insanely profitable. You're counting coins now, and it's a lot more than pocket change. Mainstream history shows Vikings as master traders by the 9th century, linking Europe to the Silk Road. You're not just dumping loot in a chest, you're funneling it into markets. That silver chalice from the last raid? It's headed for a Byzantine bazaar, swapped for spices or silk. You're rowing toward Birka, a Swedish trade hub where merchants will pay top dollar for your haul. This isn't robbery, it's economics with an axe. Here's a quirky tidbit. Vikings sometimes used hacked up silver as currency, weighing bits of jewelry instead of coins. Imagine paying for bread with a chunk of a monk's candlestick. Historians still argue whether this hack silver was practical or just lazy accounting. You're weighing a mangled arm ring now, and it's oddly satisfying, like breaking a piggy bank. You're not just a raider, you're a deal maker. Vikings knew their markets: English wool, Frankish wine, even slaves from Dublin's markets. You're haggling with a trader, swapping furs for amber beads. It's not all glamour. The guy smells like old fish, and his scales look rigged. But this is why raids worked. Every hit fueled a trade network stretching from Greenland to Baghdad. You're not burning villages for fun. You're banking their wealth. The ship's loaded with more than loot. You've got captives, thralls they call them, bound for sale. It's grim, but it's business. By 850 AD, Viking ports like Hedeby were slave trade hubs, feeding labor to Arab and European markets. You're not proud of it, but your cut's enough to buy land back home. Joke break. Why'd the Viking trade his loot? Because retail therapy hits different with a longship. You grin, but your hands are busy sorting goods. This isn't random. You're targeting high-value stuff. Relics, manuscripts, anything that fetches a price. That fancy book you snatched. Some scholar in Cordoba will pay a fortune. You're not illiterate. You just know what sells. And you're not alone. Viking trade routes are like medieval Amazon, delivering chaos and profit. You're even paying tolls to dodge river patrols. A cost of doing business. But it's not all smooth. Pirates eye your cargo, and some allies might stab you for it. You're sleeping with one eye open, axe close. This is the other half of looting. Risk. Vikings mitigated it with smarts, splitting profits, investing in land, even bribing kings for safe passage. You're learning fast, stashing coins for a farm someday. Another joke. Why'd the Viking love markets? Because nothing says deal like a sword on the table. You're docking at Birka now, the air thick with smoke and haggling. This is where raids pay off, where loot becomes legacy. You're not just rich, you're building an empire, one stolen treasure at a time. You're knee-deep in mud, shield raised, as arrows whistle past. The village you're raiding isn't asleep anymore. Locals have rallied, and you're in a proper scrap. Viking raids weren't just smash and grab. They thrived because you and your crew could adapt on the fly, turning chaos into victory. You're not following a playbook. You're rewriting it mid-fight. And that's why these raids rarely failed. Mainstream history highlights Viking flexibility, like their 845 AD siege of Paris, where they shifted tactics to outsmart Frankish defenses. You're not stuck in one plan. The locals formed a shield wall, so you're circling, probing for gaps. Your leader signals a feigned retreat. Classic Viking move. You bolt, luring the enemy into a trap. They chase, and your hidden archers let loose. It's not brute force, it's chess with blood. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings carried dice for mid-battle bets, wagering on who'd kill the most. Imagine rolling bones while dodging spears. Historians still argue whether this was morale boosting or just reckless gambling. You're tempted to toss a die now, but an axe grazes your helm, snapping you back to reality. You're adapting fast. The enemy's got numbers, but you're using the terrain, choking them in a narrow gully. Vikings didn't need perfect plans. They thrived in the mess. You're shouting orders, splitting your crew to flank. This isn't a set-piece battle. It's improv. By 870 AD, Vikings were carving up England's great heathen army, switching from raids to conquest because they could pivot like nobody else. Your weapons help. You're wielding a spear for reach, then swapping to a sayax when things get close. Vikings didn't lug heavy armor. Speed's your edge. You're darting between trees, striking and fading. Joke, break. Why'd the Viking dodge the spear? Because catch isn't in his vocabulary. You smirk, but you're focused, eyeing the enemy's weak left flank. The real trick is reading the fight. You're watching their leader. He's hesitant, shouting too much. Your crew senses it, tightening the noose. Vikings train to spot these cracks, exploiting fear or fatigue. You're not just fighting bodies. You're breaking wills. That's why raids worked. You could turn a bad situation into a win. Remember that Lindisfarne hit. Monks froze, but you adapted to their panic, grabbing loot before they blinked. But it's not all smooth. A stray arrow nicks your arm, and the locals are regrouping. You're not invincible, just quick. Your leader calls for a shield wall to cover the retreat. You lock shields, moving as one, loot sacks slung over shoulders. This is adaptability in action. Know when to fight, when to run. You're not here to die gloriously. You're here to profit. Another joke. Why'd the Viking change plans? Because Plan B stands for better loot. You're back on the ship now, rowing hard, the village fading in smoke. You lost a man, but you gained a haul. This fight taught you why Vikings ruled. They bent the battlefield to their will, twisting every screw-up into success. You're bruised but grinning, already plotting the next raid. You're hunched over a fire in a smoky hall, the air thick with mead and tension. Viking raids weren't just about ships or swords. They leaned on shaky alliances and backstabbing deals that could make or break a raid. You're not just a warrior now. You're a player in a high-stakes game of trust and betrayal, where one wrong move could sink your crew. This is the messy politics that fueled Viking success. Mainstream history notes how Vikings forged alliances, like their 866 AD pact with York's Anglo-Saxon rebels to topple a king. You're negotiating with a rival chieftain, his eyes sharp as his axe. He's promising men for your next raid, but you're not naive. He wants a bigger cut of the loot. You offer him silver and a share of the glory, knowing you'll ditch him if he gets greedy. This isn't friendship, it's strategy. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Viking deals were sealed by swapping cloaks, a symbolic "you're my bro" gesture. Sounds cozy, but half the time, one guy was plotting to stab the other. Historians still argue whether these rituals built trust or just masked scheming. You're swapping cloaks now, and the wool itches, much like your doubts about this guy's loyalty. You're navigating a web of promises. Your crew's allied with a Danish jarl for this raid, but he's feuding with a Norwegian rival who controls the river you need. You're playing both sides, bribing the Norwegian with stolen Frankish wine. It's not noble, but it's effective. Vikings thrived because they worked the angles, allying with locals, pitting enemies against each other. By 880 AD, they're cozying up to Frankish lords, raiding one town while sparing another for a payout. This isn't easy. You're watching your back, knowing betrayal's as common as bad weather. Last raid, a friend tipped off the target village for a bribe. You lost 2 men, but still pulled it off. Joke break. Why'd the Viking trust his ally? Because "stab me later" is practically a handshake. You smirk, but your hand's on your dagger. The real skill is balancing loyalty and opportunism. You're keeping your crew tight, sharing loot fairly to avoid mutiny. But you're also dangling promises to outsiders. Land, thralls, whatever keeps them in line. Vikings didn't just raid, they manipulated. That York deal, it wasn't about trust. It was about using rebels to weaken defenses, then taking the city for themselves. But it's not all smooth. The chieftain's eyeing you like a wolf smells weakness. You're countering with charm, a few well-timed gifts, and a subtle flex of your warband size. This is why raids worked. Vikings played people as well as they played the sea. Another joke. Why'd the Viking make friends? Because enemies are just allies who haven't been bribed yet. You're sealing the deal now, but you're ready to bolt if it sours. You're leaving the hall, the alliance shaky but holding. The raid's greenlit, but you're already planning for double crosses. This is the Viking way. Trust sparingly, scheme relentlessly. You're not just raiding villages, you're raiding trust, and that's what made them unstoppable. You're rowing through a gray dawn, the longship cutting through fog like a blade. Whispers of your crew's last raid cling to the air. tales of fire and loot that make villagers tremble before you even land. Viking raids didn't just thrive on tactics, they fed on a reputation that turned their name into a weapon. You're not just a raider now, you're a legend, and that cultural intimidation makes every strike hit harder. Mainstream history marks how Viking fear spread by the 9th century, with chronicles like the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle describing panic at their mere approach. You're not sneaking in this time. You don't need to. The village ahead is already half empty, folks fleeing at rumors of your sails. Your crew's dragon-proud ship looms like a nightmare, its reputation doing half the work. By 850 AD, coastal towns paid Danegeld, bribes, to avoid your wrath. You're not just fighting, you're cashing in on dread. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings carved runes, boasting of their raids, like medieval graffiti tags. Picture scratching, Olaf was here, looted your church on a rock. Historians still argue whether these were for fame or to spook locals. You're eyeing a runestone now, its jagged script hyping your last hit. It's cocky, but it works. People talk, and fear spreads. You're leaning into it. Your crew's chanting low, guttural songs, not for morale, but to unnerve anyone listening. Your armor studded with looted rings, flashing wealth and menace. Vikings didn't just raid, they branded themselves. You're not a man, you're a walking horror story. That's why raids worked. Half the battle was won before you swung an axe. Remember Lindisfarne? Monks didn't fight because they were already broken by the idea of you. This reputation isn't accidental. You're spreading it, letting captured thralls escape to babble about your crew's size. Exaggerated, of course. You're not above rumors, either. Whispering you've got Odin's favor or a pet wolf. Joke break. Why'd the Vikings spread gossip? Because nothing travels faster than we're all doomed. You grin, but you're watching the shore, where torches flicker nervously. The downside? You're a target. Every wannabe hero wants to slay a Viking. You're dodging ambushes from cocky lords who think they can outwit the legend. But you're ready, using their bravado against them. Vikings leaned into their myth, letting enemies overestimate or underestimate them. Both worked. You're not invincible, just inevitable. Another joke. Why'd the Viking polish his axe? Because shiny terror cuts deeper. You're landing now, and the village is a ghost town. A few brave souls stand their ground, but their hands shake. This is the payoff. Your reputation empties defenses, making raids smoother. You're not just looting, you're harvesting fear, and it's why Vikings ruled the seas. You're standing on a windswept cliff, the sea churning below, your longship bobbing like a loyal hound. The raids are done for now, and you're looking back on the chaos you've sown. Villages burned, treasures hauled, legends carved. Viking raids weren't just a moment, they were a force that reshaped the world. You're not just a raider anymore. You're part of a legacy that still echoes, and it's time to see why it mattered. Mainstream history shows Viking raids reshaping Europe by the 10th century, sparking trade, conquest, and even new kingdoms. You're thinking of the Danelaw, where Vikings didn't just raid England, but settled it, blending their laws with Saxon ways. Your raids fueled this, turning loot into land, fear into power. From Ireland's Dublin to Russia's rivers, you helped build a network that outlasted the bloodiest battles. You're not just a thief, you're a world changer. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings left behind rune sticks with tallies of their raids, like medieval scorecards. Imagine them whittling 5 churches, 2 markets, while sipping mead. Historians still argue whether these were boasts or bookkeeping. You're holding one now, its notches worn smooth, a quiet brag of your crew's havoc. It's not just wood, it's proof you were here. You're reflecting on the bigger picture. Raids weren't random, they were a system. Remember those sleek ships, silent strikes, and brutal training? They made you unstoppable. The fear you spread, the deals you cut, the markets you fed, it all stacked up. By 900 AD, Vikings weren't just raiders. They were kings, dukes, even Christians in some places. You're not sure how you feel about that last bit, but it's fact. Your chaos birthed order. The legacy isn't all rosy. You're haunted by faces, villagers, monks, even your own men lost to arrows or storms. Raids built empires but broke lives. Historians still argue whether Vikings were villains or visionaries. Were you a plague or a catalyst? You're leaning toward both, but the truth's slippery, like wet rope in a squall. Joke break. Why'd the Viking retire? Because even legends need a nap. You smile, but your eyes are on the horizon. This is why raids worked. They were more than robbery. You sailed, fought, traded, and schemed, weaving a web that stretched from Greenland to Baghdad. Your reputation still lingers. Modern sailors curse Viking weather when fog rolls in. Another joke. Why's the Viking saga long? Because short story doesn't fit on a runestone. You're tired, but proud. Your axe heavier with every swing. Now, as the wind softens, you're turning inward. The sea's a mirror, reflecting your victories and sins. You're not immortal, but your story is. The raids made you, and you made history. Let's slow down now. Let the waves hush your thoughts. Picture the longship rocking gently, the stars fading into dawn. You're safe here, wrapped in the quiet of a world you shook. The fire's low, the air cool, and your eyelids are heavy. Drift with the tide. Let the saga slip away. Sleep's calling, soft as a whisper, and you're ready to answer.